Hello everybody, I'm Rod, and welcome to another edition of the Manliness Venture. Today we're going to be talking about D-Day because on the day of the release of this video is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Operation Overlord, or D-Day, happened on June 6, 1944, and it was led by General Dwight Eisenhower. It took over 18 months to prepare for, and it involved 11,000 ships and over 150,000 men. It is one of the most important battles in the history of mankind, and it is the largest amphibious invasion that has ever happened. So we're going to be specifically talking about Omaha Beach and the fighting that happened there, because there was where the fighting was fiercest. The German defenses in Omaha Beach were especially strong compared to the other beaches. Although the Allied forces had bombed the area, most of the German defenses went unscathed. The troops that left for Omaha Beach left England at around 2 a.m. When the men got closer to France, they got into these boats called Higgins Boats. And these are the boats that you see in Saving Private Ryan, where they have that big metal door in front that acts as both a ramp and a cover. So the men that are inside these boats are wearing 60 pounds of equipment, excluding their weapon. And also they are wet and they are seasick, most of them. So the boats landed around 6:30 a.m. at low tide. And the Germans see these boats coming and they don't fire because they don't want to give away their positions. And the boats bottom out at about 30 yards from the sand because Omaha Beach is a very shallow beach. And once those doors come open, then the Germans start firing. 90% of the first wave of assault is wiped out within 5 minutes. And most of the amphibious tank support that was supposed to be there at the time of the invasion sank in the ocean with full loss of crew. And from the second wave of reinforcements on, the job only gets harder because now there's downed men in the beach, there's destroyed vehicles in the beach, there's still the obstacles of the mines that the Germans had laid out, and the machine gun fire is not ceasing. So this recording is thought to be the only surviving footage of the beach that day, and here is an account of a veteran that was fighting there on D-Day.
Machine gun bullets were everywhere. I never realized firepower could be that intensive. They were just targets.
Omaha Beach is a killing zone, and because of the intense fires that the boats are taking, many men are jumping overboard and drowning as they try to swim onto the beach because they have too much equipment with them. And the people that were injured, many of them are drowning because the tide is rising and there's nobody to help them. The men were instructed not to stop and help because the goal was to take the beach. So there are men laying everywhere crying for help, and this mixes in with the noise of machine gun fire and explosions, and it must have been a living hell. Things are not going well at Omaha Beach. General Bradley from the USS Augusta is hearing reports and he's considering stop sending reinforcements to Omaha because the losses are just too great. But he convinces himself that the only thing that's going to win the battle is to keep sending men until there are no men left, because eventually the Germans have to bow to the pressure. General Bradley orders the ships to come in as close as half a mile to the beach to start blasting the German fortifications from point blank range. This attack causes such dense smoke that the men use the smoke as cover, and while wearing their gas masks, they advance on the German positions. A main turning point in the battle is when General Norman Dutch Coda orders a Bangalore mine to blow up a rolled up wire barrier and charges through himself, leading his men to attack on the Germans. So by early afternoon, the Americans start to take the German positions. However, in some points of the beach, the men are pinned down under heavy machine gun fire until 3 p.m. Eventually, the Allied forces take over the beach, and this happens at about 8:30 p.m. However, High Command was expecting this to be done by 8:30 a.m. The main mistake made by the Germans is that they didn't use their tanks to wipe out the invasion. And this happened because Hitler wanted full control of the tank battalions, and he was asleep until noon that day, and none of his generals wanted to wake him up. The American position at Omaha Beach is extremely fragile, and any forceful counterattack by the Germans would wipe them out. However, this counterattack never comes because the Germans still believe that this invasion is a ruse and that the real invasion is coming up to the north in Calais. If you want a true experience of what it was like to be there that day, you should definitely go and watch Saving Private Ryan. It's one of the greatest movies ever made, and I used some of the clips of that movie in this episode because it is a great movie and it depicts what happened on D-Day to extreme detail. So I recently went to France with my wife and we visited Omaha Beach, and one of the things that really struck me was just how peaceful that beach is today. I can't imagine what it was like to be there on D-Day.
I saw an account of a veteran that said that they had to run 200 yards, and I said, no way, that has to be an exaggeration. But absolutely not. The tide is probably about halfway and it would have been coming up. And I mean, from here to where the shore is now is at least 100 yards, at least a football field. And the sand probably went further because the barrier that is now there is not actually, it was not there. There's account of Germans that talk about how the first guys didn't have anywhere to go, and so they pretty much all died. And then after that, more people came and they didn't go that far. And just more people kept coming and they couldn't go anywhere. Eventually they made it up the hill. It's just insane to think about the sacrifice that they had to withstand and they had to go through. So that is one of the German defenses. And the monument is another place where there was a turret, and you can see just how much ground that could cover.
So what are lessons that we can take from these heroes of the past and apply to our lives today? I think the main one is courage. These men were extremely courageous. I mean, they realized that they couldn't go back and they had to go forward, and they went for it with everything that they had. Are we doing that in our lives today in the things that we know we need to do? Are we being courageous, or are we cowering in fear of what others are going to think about us? I hope none of us have to go through something similar that these men went through. However, I believe that the lesson in courage can be taken into all of us because all of us need to improve and be more courageous in our lives. I think another lesson that we need to learn today is sacrifice. These men sacrificed so much, and some of them sacrificed everything for what they believe is right. Are we willing to sacrifice our comfort to do the things that we know we need to do and the things that are right for us to do? I don't think any of us are going to be called to be as courageous and to sacrifice as much as these men had to do. However, I believe that courage and sacrifice are things that all men can do better in their lives. So it doesn't feel right that I would get the last word for this episode. So I'm going to give the last word to a veteran that was there that day in an interview. And if you want to know more about that documentary, there's a link down below that you can click and you can go watch the whole thing. But as he's speaking, I hope that inspires us to be better men. So until next time, man up.
Their tide was coming in, and it was bringing in bodies, and then when it went out again, it just, hundreds of them, just rolling in the surf. And it was a pretty sad sight. Death to a lot of good men. It was a terrible obstacle that we had to overcome to win the war, World War II.